So I've seen a little bit of fuss going around recently about people having their accounts limited by bookmakers. It's nothing new, been going on for a number of years. But I thought I'd tell you the story of when I was first limited by bookmakers, because it was a long time ago and it was the thing that actually kicked me out of the industry even before I'd got started. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. Click here to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll get instant notification of new videos as they're released. So yeah, take yourself back to the early 90s. I was actually working for a retailer back then, and I was really interested in carrying forward the work that I'd done on the football pools in the sort of mid to late 80s. So I came up with this brilliant system that involved backing the draw as a multiple. And it was quite a clever system, even if I do say so myself, because what I used to do was I used to look for mispricing on the draw and other results. And then I used to line up carefully all of my positions so that they would end up in a very large multiple. I would get massive odds on it. And what I used to do is I was going to use the word scattergun. That's the wrong word to approach. I would intelligently think out how the bets were going to be placed, arrange them in a certain pattern so that I would place many, many bets, but one of those lines would result in a huge payoff that would more than cover all of the other bets that I particularly placed. So I used to, back then, of course, odds were not updated so frequently. And what used to happen was they would do the odds at the weekend or whenever, and maybe update them at some point. But I would be looking for discrepancies on pricing across all of the coupons and prices that the bookmakers offered. I would then exploit that by rearranging them in clusters of bets so that one of those would pay off. Because of course, even if you find value, it doesn't mean that it's going to pay off immediately. So I would place multiples of bets in a number of different ways, in the same way that I did on the football pools, to allow one of those lines to eventually pay off. So I would go in, hand over quite a complicated bet, shop manager would check it, and then just take my money, because they knew that basically most people were inveterate gamblers and fools. They had no idea what was about to hit them. But what I actually did was started winning money. But not only did I win money, it was big enough that they couldn't pay me from cash. They had to write out a check. And as soon as that happened, obviously the alarm bells started to ring, because area manager or head office or somebody would sort of say, you know, I see there's another $5,000 check has been written out. What's going on there then? It's like, well, there's this chap, this young chap that comes in, always places it on football, always does a similar sort of bet, quite complicated. And obviously the instruction was given at some point to stop taking those bets, because I turned up happily one Friday evening after knocking off from work to place my bet, and they said, sorry, we're not going to take your bet. And I just went, what? You must do it, you have to do it. And they said, no, we're under no obligation whatsoever to take your business. If you want to, go down the road and do it there. So I was like, surely they can't do this, because coming from a retail background at that particular moment in time, I knew that consumers had all sorts of rights. So I went to the Citizens Advice Bureau on my day off the next week and asked them, what rights did I have? And they basically said, absolutely none. You're gambling. Nobody gives a toss. You can't do it. It's not legally enforceable. A gambling debt is not legally enforceable. They're under no obligation to take your bet. They can do whatever they like. And that situation more or less persists until today. Because if you place a bet with a bookmaker, if you win, they're losing. Now that doesn't happen on an exchange. If you win on an exchange, the bookmaker doesn't lose, because the exchange makes its money by effectively taxing winners. But with a bookmaker, if you win, they lose. So one of the tactics that they use to stop themselves from losing is to close your account, limit it, do any number of tricks to stop you from taking the bet, but there's no obligation to take the bet. So yeah, I was furious at this, but there was nothing I could do. I'd learned that there was nothing I could do, so I just had to start getting clever. Started using different shops, and then started going to different towns. But eventually, I just ran out of all avenues. I was not welcome at any of these venues. There was no way of legitimately doing it. And you could get somebody else to do it, but eventually they would be stopped. The pattern was, the activity, the bet was so unusual that it was pretty obvious what was going on. So I became limited, and my face was probably pasted on the counter of every bookmaker within a 50-mile radius. And they said, if this guy walks in, just, kick him out again immediately. And that was surprising for me, because I, for some reason, naivety probably, I just assumed that if I found a way of winning, I would be able to win forever and start ramping up the stakes. But that was the thing that actually threw me out of the betting industry, because I just thought, I don't want anything to do with this. It's rubbish. How can, it's my initiative against theirs, and because they lost, they're just throwing their toys out the pram. And how can this happen? There's no future in this. Why would I bother to do this? So it was actually that was the final thing that I did before I left the entire gambling industry. I just decided to pack it in and just thought, there's no future in this. There's no point in doing this. Why would I do this? And that was when I moved on to financial markets and started trading financial markets and getting more interested in financials. And then, of course, we ended up going full circle when Betfair and betting exchanges were launched, because suddenly all of those things I learned all those years ago suddenly came back into play again. And I thought, well, this is a fantastic opportunity, which is exactly what it turned out to be. But yeah, that is the story of how I was originally limited and how I almost never got to this stage. If it wasn't for betting exchanges, I would have never come back. I'd be doing something else now. So we have to be thankful that exchanges came around to give us the opportunity to be able to bet without being limited or restricted. It's an absolute boon for somebody that's willing to put the work and effort in. But yeah, that was my story on being restricted by bookmakers. If you're interested in learning more about BetAngel, visit betangel.com and download a free trial today.